Here's another view. As I mentioned, I'm going to show you a lot of different models for where DAM fits in. So last slide was about DAM. This is really the first perspective I'm giving you on where DAM fits in the enterprise. And this is a slide that admittedly has been iterated on so many times over the years, where I've worked with different colleagues. This particular version I created in collaboration with a very smart woman, Jing Wang from ICP. And what you see here is, if we just start in the gray area, there tends to be a core DAM that is most tightly coupled in most organizations with PIM, or Product Information Management, and DRM, which is Digital Rights Management. And many companies today, they specifically will run the same technology to do all three of those things. But I will tell you that if you have a single tool, or you buy from a single vendor doing those three things in one application, there are limited PIM capabilities and limited DRM capabilities. And we'll talk more specifically about PIM and DRM in future sessions in a lot more depth than we will today. But oftentimes, for many organizations, it's enough. Right? You don't necessarily need a separate, very sophisticated PIM. You don't necessarily need a separate, very sophisticated DRM system that's tied into your payments or that deals with royalties, etc. Maybe you just need 5 or 6 digital rights fields to let you know whether or not you can use an asset or whether it's expired. It really depends on the level of sophistication of product information management and DRM that you have. But most of the organizations that I work with that are not media organizations don't need a separate DRM tool. And unless you are a very big product company, you probably don't need a separate PIM. So that's the core. And then when we think about the first level of integration with DAM, tends to be creative project management and collaboration tools. And many will put that in the framework of what's called MRM, or marketing resource management. And there are many DAM vendors that have now also built or bought MRMs. And so you could buy a package, and I'll show you some models from vendors that actually do that. And so maybe they're providing the DAM with the MRM. And this is where you need to start thinking about, well, how do I want to approach it? You know, what makes the most sense for me? And then wrapping around that tends to be more the marketing and brand portal, where you might be collaborating with agencies, or you might have different brand managers around the world coming in to a very specific view of your DAM to only see that particular brand. And you might also have a very tight integration with what's called web to print technology. So this is where you're customizing print output, or you're personalizing print output as a layer on top of the DAM. So that circle in the middle is what I see as the most common DAM integrations. They are the most specific ones as well, in terms of what the vendors are working hard to connect in this particular industry. And if I'm a user, in an ideal world, this is all in one interface. Wouldn't that be great? If I could just, as a marketing user, go in and I could create and I could manage and I could collaborate and I could search and I could share and I could do all these things all the time, knowing how is this asset related to my product data? How is this asset governed in terms of rights? Can I use it? Do I have the rights to use it? Am I sure it's the final asset because it's been handed off? Can I collaborate around it? And then can I have a brand specific portal that allows me to share just to in a specific brand context? And what vendors tend to call this is a content hub. And I think that's a very good term, but not all content hubs are the same. So maybe for you, it's just DAM and creative project management and a brand portal. Maybe you don't have a print need. For a media company, it might be DAM and digital rights management and maybe a bit of MRM wrapped around it. So it really varies from vertical to vertical. And a little bit later, I have some specific slides on how different verticals and how different industries apply this. So that tends to be how DAM fits into most enterprises. And what goes into the content hub and what goes into these very tightly integrated technologies in the circle is really data from the left, okay? So we think about foundational enterprise systems like analytics and product lifecycle. So product lifecycle, when it's as it goes through its life cycle, when it's done, that becomes content in the PIM. And ERP with the resource management, there's resource data, there's campaign planning, and then that becomes specific data that ends up in your MRM. So everything to the left is more in development. It's things that are in process. They're not really final. Once they're done, once they evolve, then that's when they're distribution ready. And that's where everything should come together in this idea of an Uber dam or a content hub with all of these tightly wrapped technologies around it. But ideally, you don't want sloppy content or unfinished content really ending up in a hub. The hub is where people go to figure out, okay, let's publish this, and how are we going to publish this? And it's also where the intelligence starts to come together. It's also where intelligence starts to get introduced, okay? So once we start to filter and put together packages in the Content Hub, you filter, you publish to all the different channels on the right. And ideally, you have a cycle of analysis where you think about, okay, I've published all these things, I've distributed these different assets to all these different channels. How do I then have a look at how this asset performed? And I circle that back into my hub. Now, I've seen some companies keep their analytics completely separate. I've seen others actually integrate performance analytics back into their DAM because that's where they like to have it. Again, there's not really one right way to do it. There's an important thing that you need to do, which is decide how you're going to do it and stick to it. That's how you have to figure out in terms of your strategy and get everybody aligned to make sure that however you choose to approach it is consistent and everyone's on the same page.